Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasura Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasura Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasura Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jasura Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Shri Shri Radha Madhava ki Shri Shri Radha Giridhari ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Jaja Shudra Shri Srimad Divine Grace by Charana Ravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada ki Jai Jayom Vishnupad Paramhamsa Parivrajaka Jaja Shudra Srimad Bhagavatam Bhakti Saranta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai, Anantakuti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Samveda Bhakti ki jai, Gaura Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories, Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. So this morning we're sixth canto. We're in chapter 12, Vritrasura's glorious death, beginning with text 2. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tato Yugandangi Katora Jivam Avidya Shulam Tarasa Surendra Kshiptva Mahendraya Vindya Viro Hato Asi Papiti Rusha Jagada Tato Yugandangi Katoro Jivam Avidya Shulam Tarasa Surendra Shipva Mahendra. Actually, this doesn't go with this. It's not that long. Is it? Okay. Shipva Mahendraya Vinadya Viro Hatosi Papeti Rusha Jagada Tato Yugantangi Katoro Jibham Avidya Shulam Tarasa Surendra Shiptva Mahendraya Vinadya Viro Hatosi Papeti Rusha Jagada Tato Yugantangi Katoro Jivam Avidya Shulam Tarasa Surendra Shiptva Mahendraya Vinadya Viro Hatosi Papeti Rusha Jagada. Please chant. Lojagam Kitatora Jivam Anyone else? Ladies? Good, chant. Avijashulam Tarasa Surendra Shilpa Mahendraya Vinajaviro Adosi Pape Tirusha Jagada. Anyone else? Okay. Word for word. Tata. Thereafter. Yuga Anta Agni. Like the fire at the end of every millennium. Katora. Sharp. Jivam. Possessing points. Avinja. Twirling. Shulam. The trident. Tarasa. With great force. Asura Indra. The great hero of the demons. Vritrasura. Shiptwa. Throwing. Mahendraya. Unto King Indra. Vinadja. Roaring. Viraha. The great hero. Vritrasura. Hata. Killed. Asi. You are. Papa. O sinful one. Iti. Thus. Usha. With great anger. Jagada. He cried out. Translation. Then Vritrasura, the great hero of the demons, whirled his trident, which had points like the flames of the blazing fire at the end of the millennium. That's hot. With great force and anger, he threw it at Indra, roaring and exclaiming loudly, O sinful one, thus shall I kill you. Text 3, translation. Flying in the sky, Vritrasura's trident resembled a brilliant meteor. Although the blazing weapon was difficult to look upon, King Indra, unafraid, cut it to pieces with his thunderbolt. Simultaneously, he cut off one of Vritrasura's arms, which was as thick as the body of Vasuki, the king of the serpents. For, although one of his arms was severed from his body, Vritrasura angrily approached King Indra and struck him on the jaw with an iron mace. He also struck the elephant that carried Indra. Thus, Indra dropped the thunderbolt from his hand. The denizens of various planets, like the demigods, demons, charanas, and siddhas, praised Vritrasura's deed, but when they observed that Indra was in great danger, they lamented, Alas, alas. Text 6. Having dropped the thunderbolt from his hand in the presence of his enemy, Indra was practically defeated and was very much ashamed. He dared not pick up his weapon again. Vritrasura, however, encouraged him, saying, Take up your thunderbolt and kill your enemy. This is not the time to lament your fate. Text 7. Vritrasura continued, O Indra, no one is guaranteed of being always victorious, but the original enjoyer, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. He is a cause of creation, maintenance, and annihilation. He knows everything. Being dependent and being obliged to accept material bodies, belligerent subordinates are sometimes victorious and sometimes defeated. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Sarvasya chaham hridisani bishto mattakshmitir jnanam apohanam cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. When two parties fight, the fighting actually goes on under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma, the Supersoul. Elsewhere in the Gita 3:27, the Lord says, Prakate kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasaha ahankara vimuratma kartamiti manyate. The bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by nature. The living entities work only under the direction of the Supreme Lord. The Lord gives orders to material nature, and she arranges facilities for the living entities. The living entities are not independent, although they foolishly think themselves the doers, karta. Victory is always with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As for the subordinate living entities, they fight under the arrangement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Victory or defeat is not actually theirs. It is an arrangement by the Lord through the agency of material nature. Pride in victory or moroseness in defeat is useless. One should fully depend on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is responsible for the victory and defeat of all living entities. The Lord advises, Niyatam kuru karma tvam karma jayayo hi akaramanaha. Perform your prescribed duty, for action is better than inaction. The living entity is ordered to act according to his position. Victory or defeat depends upon the Supreme Lord. Karamani evadakadaste ma paleshu kadachana. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. One must act sincerely according to his position. Victory or defeat depends on the Lord. Vritrasura encouraged Indra, saying, "Don't be morose because of my victory. There's no need to stop fighting. Instead, you should go on with your duty. When Krishna desires, you will certainly be victorious." Little pep talk there on the battlefield, huh? This verse is very instructive for sincere workers in the Krishna conscious movement. Raise your hand if you're a sincere worker in the Krishna conscious movement. Raise your hand if you're a humble, sincere worker in the... We're all sincere workers. Okay. Just trying to see who's awake, you know. This verse, okay, we should not be jubilant in victory or morose in defeat. We should make a sincere effort to implement the will of Krishna or Śrī Caitanya Mahāprabhu, and we should not be concerned with victory and defeat. Our only duty is to work sincerely so that our activities may be recognized by Krishna. This is the last line is everything right here. Okay. Om Agyan Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Minitam Dena Taismai Sri Gurave Namaha Śrī Caitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Dena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swabadandikam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasani Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Vanchakapatarubhasya Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patidanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So by your sincere desires and wishes, I'll try to say a few things. First thing I'll say, Prabhu, could you open that door a little bit? Thank you. Vritrasura continued, O Indra, no one is guaranteed of being always victorious, but the original enjoyer, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. He is the cause of creation, maintenance, and annihilation, and he knows everything. Being dependent and being obliged to accept material bodies, belligerent subordinates are sometimes victorious and sometimes defeated. So there's a big duality in the material world. Your victory, defeat, your happiness, your distress. And everyone is struggling very hard with these different dualities. Dvandva mohena bharata, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. So here Krishna is pointing out something very, very important. In the Bhagavad Gita, 2 verses are quoted. And in those purports, Prabhupada elaborates somewhat. The first one is from the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivishto mattakshmitir jnanam apohanam cha. So Krishna is saying here that he is in the heart of every single living entity, and from him comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So Prabhupada, in the beginning of that purport, he says the Supreme Lord is situated as Paramatma in everyone's heart, and it's from him that all activities are initiated. The living entity forgets everything of his past life, but he has to act according to the direction of the Supreme Lord, who is a witness to all his work. Therefore, he begins his work according to his past deeds. Required knowledge is supplied to him, and remembrance is given to him, and he forgets also about his past life. So, if you think about it, we're all tiny little spirit souls in this material world. And how are we supposed to know how to act in this material world? Right? The soul comes into the material world, tiny little spiritual energy. How are we supposed to? And the proof of right now is how conscious are we of our bodily activities, even our simple bodily activities. You know?
The ones that hurt.
No, but I mean, just like digestion or this or that, somehow it's all going on. The body's like a universe, and so many functions are going on. at every moment, and we're completely unconscious of it, but they're going on. Who's taking care of all of that? Just like, who's cooking breakfast right now? It's happening automatic. So it's going on. We're not in there conscious, but it's going to happen. And you walk out there and there's breakfast. So everything in this material world, Krishna's taking care of it, and the living entity doesn't even know. So someone's got to give him the remembrance. See, we're wrong. There he is. There's Tyler. No one's cooking breakfast. Okay. See, we were wrong. See, right? Knowledge, forgetfulness. So, especially when we start continuing our journey in the material life, where do we start again? Right? You take your birth, you get this body, and then how do you know what to do? Prabhupada gives that example. They call it instinct in nature. So when the child's born or the calf is born, immediately knows where to get the milk. And he says, how is that possible? It's because of previous lives. He's done it before so many, many times. And Krishna simply gives a little bit of, here's some remembrance. This is what you're supposed to do. This is what you're supposed to do. Remember last time you were a human being? Remember the last time you were a demigod? Remember the last time you were a cat or a dog or a tree or this or that? Krishna's in the heart saying, can you imagine if Krishna wasn't doing that? How confusing it would be? You take birth as a dog and you think you're a cat, so Krishna's in there and he helps us also forget what we need to forget. Sometimes that question comes up. How come we can't remember all our previous lives? If we were born so many times before, why don't we have that memory? And of course, some people have some of that memory for a little while. It's described. There are books about that. But for the most part, we forget. Now, why is that? It's actually essential in order to function in this lifetime. Can you imagine if you remembered all of your previous lives, or even a few dozen of them, or even your last life? How confusing it would be? Just like we hold grudges. Let's say something horrible happened in your last life. You've got enough problem with holding grudges in this lifetime. You spend your whole life thinking about maybe a heartbreak, right? In your past life, or past, how many times do you think our hearts have been broken in this material world since we got here? You can't even imagine. How many times have we fallen in love, fallen out of love? How many times have we had a horrible death? Right? Just like in the lower species, a lot of times you're someone's dinner or lunch or even breakfast. Imagine that is. You wake up in the morning, you turn into someone's breakfast, right? Some animal swoops down and just kills you and eats you. So how would you like all those memories to come back to you? Right? So we can't function if we had them. So Krishna very kindly, we forget all of those things so we can function in this lifetime and act upon the karma that comes to us. So Krishna's point making here, Krishna is making all of these arrangements. And then the next verse is quoted, is that prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha. Let me just see here if I can do this. No. This is a verse from the 3rd chapter. This kartamiti manyate, Krishna says. I'm sorry. Technical difficulties over here. But this ahankara vimudatma kartamiti manyate. Bewildered by ahankara, false ego, that means identifying with this body, we think we're the doers. Because this body is moving and we have so many plans and we think this is us. I'm going to go do something today. What are you going to do today? Right? We got plans. Well, you're going to have something you're going to do today. You're going to do something today. Everyone's going to do something. We got all these plans, and we're thinking, "Kartamiti manyate," I'm the doer. But actually, nothing can happen unless Krishna allows it to happen. He's got to make all the arrangements, even for someone to get up and move. It's like Dravida Prabhu was saying about getting old, your body hurts. Does anyone here, when they get up from Bhagavatam class, go, oh, ow? Right? Right? Even some youngins do that, I notice nowadays. So like at times they do pujas, and you expect maybe the older people to maybe have to now sit in a chair or something. They can't sit on the ground, cross their legs. But more than half the time it's the young people, right? Because they're used to sitting in chairs all the time. And it's very difficult and a lot of pain when they try to get up and so on. So even the ability to get up and move to go do, or to remember, just like we were talking yesterday, right, about the altar, being on the altar, and sometimes you even forget what goes next. Oh, I forgot to blow the conch shell. I don't know why I'm here. Who am, you know? It gets worse as you get older, right? It gets worse. So we don't know. So who's making all these arrangements for us to do anything? That's Krishna. He is making all these arrangements. So Vritrasura is saying here, Indra, you're all attached to being victorious. Of course, both sides, whenever there's a fight, right, unless you're paid to take a fall. You hear that one before? Like in professional boxing or wrestling or whatever, or even big sports games. They've even discovered that. Football games and so on very high levels, people have been paid off to lose the game because there's a lot of money involved in gambling. Isn't that interesting? Even the Olympics, which are supposed to be very neutral, they have found this also. But generally speaking, when there's a fight between people or a competition, people want to win, right? They want to win, they don't want to lose. But victory or defeat isn't ultimately up to us. That's what Vritrasura is saying. You know, it's not up to us. Ultimately, it's up to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What can we do is just do our duty. That's we don't have too much time here because I like to read a little bit about Ramananda Roy. And so making this point at the very end, Prabhupada's saying all of us have to understand this because we are engaged in the Sankirtan movement of Chaitanya Mahāprabhu in preaching. We become attached, you know, but to being victorious, you could say, or successful in our endeavors, but sometimes we are and sometimes we're not. So the main focus should always be that we're doing our duty. Prabhupada says in the last line of the purport here, our only duty is to work sincerely so that our activities may be recognized by Krishna. So that's success for us. That's victory. That we're doing absolutely best that we possibly can, executing our duties sincerely. Why? Just so Krishna recognizes us. Doesn't matter really who else recognizes us. Sometimes these questions come up in preaching and so on. Oh, we want to make these people happy, we want to make these people happy, we want to make those people happy. And Prabhupada would say, our only business is to make Krishna happy, and everything else will follow. Often we'd be intelligent in our endeavors. I'm not saying not to be intelligent in our endeavors, but ultimately, our real success is Guru and Krishna happy with our endeavors. And that's our success. And results, I guess that's the word we want to use, results will come as they come, but it's up to Krishna. And therefore the devotee, probably in many different places, says devotee is actually always happy in the execution of devotional service. And he's leaving it up to Krishna, leaving everything up to Krishna. You know, it's not so easy because we're attached, prakate kuriyamane gunai karamani sarvasa ahankara vimudatma katamiti manyate. Because of false ego, we're attached to our way of doing things. Bandhanayan Maharaj sometimes tells a story about one of the first times he came to the temple. You know, and first, when he first came, he thought everyone was like a pure devotee, right? But then he came to probably Laguna Beach or something, and he heard two devotees arguing. Prabhu, I'm right. And the other said, no, Prabhu, I'm right. And they were going back, I'm right. Like that, but who's right? So, karta miti manyate, right? Ahankara vimudatma. Krishna's right. And we have to be a humble servant and depend upon Krishna for the results of our activities, but the real result is that Krishna is happy. What is that verse? Samsati haritosanam. Haritosanam. Tosana means happiness. Samsadhyam, perfect happiness in our activities when Krishna is happy. And how do you know Krishna is happy? Devotees would ask Prabhupada, how do you know Krishna is happy? Yeah, the spiritual master is happy. Devotees are happy. If you want to know if your activities are pleasing to Krishna, look around at the devotees. If they've got this sour look on their face when you come around, maybe it's not a good idea. Something's going on. Well, the devotees are very happy when the spiritual, yasya prasada, bhagavat prasado, yasya prasadam nagati katopi. It's so simple. It's so simple. It's not difficult at all. But our illusion that I am the doer creates problems in our personal life, and it creates problems in society, right? Just like this, I guess, call it a war that's going on over there. There's apparently one person who's got a really big ego, started the whole thing. right? He doesn't want to stop. Kartamiti manyate. So this type of feeling that I am the doer, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, like that, very, very attached, create all kinds of problems. But the devotees of the Lord, saintly persons, all over the world, they're very, very peaceful because they understand the real perfection of life is just to make sure, do the best I can to make sure Krishna is happy. And what will please Krishna, if you don't know, ask Krishna's dearmost friends, relatives, spiritual master, those who know Krishna, the Supreme Lord, and consult what Krishna says. Krishna says over and over and over and over again what will make him happy. In fact, even Prabhupada, in that famous exchange, they said, Prabhupada, what will make you the happiest? On one occasion he said that you love Krishna. That you love Krishna, that'll make him happy. Like that. So that should be our endeavor. Our endeavor. To always just trying to please Krishna, making him recognize us. Like that. So, if I can take a few minutes because of the time. Today is the disappearance day of Ramananda Roy. And there is... Now, Ramananda Roy, there's a whole chapter here, long chapter, Madhya Lila, chapter 8, the meeting of Chaitanya Mahāprabhu and Ramananda Roy. Quite a lot of the chapters, their first conversation where Chaitanya Mahāprabhu asked about what's the goal of life, what's the perfection of life. And they keep going back and forth. Ramananda Roy starts at the very bottom. It says Varnashram. If you follow Varnashram, that's the perfection of life. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, no, that's external. Is there something more? And he kept going all the way up to pure devotional service, and then through all the different devotees in Vrindavan to the gopis and Srimati Radharani. And there's so much of that pastime there. But there's another conversation that took place a few days later, which is shorter. And I thought I would read that if that's okay, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is asking some very pertinent questions about life, and Ramananda Roy is giving the perfect answers. So I'll just read the translations here. And this is starting with, it says, Śrī Caitanya Mahāprabhu asked the questions, and Ramananda Roy gave the answers. In this way, they were engaged in discussion throughout the night. So on one occasion, the Lord inquired of all types of education, what's the most important? Ramananda replied, no education is important other than the transcendental devotional service of Krishna. Śrī Caitanya Mahāprabhu then asked Ramananda Roy, out of all glorious activities, what's the most glorious? Ramananda Roy replied, the person who is reputed to be a devotee of Lord Krishna enjoys the utmost fame and glory. You know why that is? Because it's eternal. Of course, it's dear to Krishna, but it's eternal. Prabhupada points out here in this long purport here. Then Lord Chaitanya asked, of many capitalists who possess great riches, who's the topmost? Right? We have Forbes 500. So Ramananda replied, he who is richest is in love for Radha and Krishna is the greatest capitalist. Śrī Caitanya Mahāprabhu asked, of all kinds of distress, what's the most painful? Yes. Ramananda replied, apart from separation from the devotee of Krishna, I know of no unbearable happiness. So, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then inquired of all liberated persons, who should be accepted as the greatest? That's an important question because there's so many spiritualists with different paths and so on, even liberated souls. So who's the best of all liberated souls? Ramananda replied, he who has love for Krishna has attained the topmost liberation. And then he asked Ramananda Roy, among many songs, which song is to be considered the actual religion of the living entity? So many people are singing songs. And he replied, that song describing the loving affairs of Sri Radha and Krishna is superior to all other songs. And then he asked, of all auspicious and beneficial activities, which is the best for the living entity? Ramananda replied, the only auspicious activity is association with devotees of Krishna. And he asked again, what should all living entities constantly remember? And Ramananda replied, the chief objects of remembrance are always the Lord's holy name, qualities, and pastimes. And then he asked again, of many types of meditation, which is required for all living entities? And Brahmananda replied, the chief duty of every living entity is to meditate upon the lotus feet of Radha and Krishna. And he asked again, where should the living entity live, abandoning all other places? Ramananda replied, 1030 Grand Avenue. Just want to see who's awake. Just want to see who's awake. Just want to see who's awake. He should live in the holy place known as Vrindavan or Brajabhumi, where the Lord performed his rasa dance. And then he asked, of all topics people should listen to, what's the best for all living entities? Ramananda replied, hearing about the loving affairs between Radha and Krishna is most pleasing to the ear. And he asked, among all worshipable objects, what is the chief? Ramananda replied, the chief worshipable object is the holy name of Radha and Krishna, the Hare Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, so we can end there. So on this point of thinking oneself the doer, and that victory is within our own control, any comments or questions? Because it's a very important point, especially at the end of the purport, where Prabhupada's talking about all sincere workers in this movement should develop this mentality. Yes?
Hare Krishna. Prabhupada said in a morning walk that this material world is a dream. You probably are familiar with this, that there's the waking dream and the night dream. That the only difference between the two is that we spend more time in the waking dream as compared to the night dream, and therefore we consider that to be reality. If that's the case, then this material world does not exist separately from the mind, because just as the night dream, we create a world, we wake up, it's gone. Similarly, when we go to sleep, this material world is gone, and in deep sleep, both the dream and the waking state are gone. And yet, if I were to say, last night I had a pastime with Krishna, and therefore I'm going to write the next canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, you would all consider that ridiculous and, laugh. However, the pastimes that are enunciated in the Puranas, or even described by devotees with Srila Prabhupada during the waking state, are considered authoritative. Why? And to bring that to its logical conclusion, if we are in the state of existence of waking dreams and night dreams, how can one properly discern between spiritual eternal truth and mental superimposition?
Well, that's a mouthful. Hare Krishna. But actually, it goes right back to this verse, ahankara vimuratma kartamiti manyate. Like you're saying, for us, the daydream and night dream, one's long, one's short. But the point is, we have to go out of our own cranium. Yes, for us, that's what we're thinking. But beyond us, there's a greater reality. In other words, yes, it's true. I have a dream at night, and during the day I think so many things, but that's not the limits of reality, our own perception. There's a greater reality going on, obviously, that we're part of. And what that reality is, that's what the devotees of the Lord, that's what knowledge is, that's what Veda is, that's what Guru, Shastra, and Sadhu tell us. There's something beyond our own limited... like they say, there's one line about, our perception of reality is something beyond our tiny cranium. So there's a lot more out there than what we think is day and night and short dream and long dream, and we're doing this and we're doing that. And the process of Krishna consciousness is to bring us to that level beyond all that type of limited consciousness. So that's what we're practicing. We're trying to become free from this ahankara vimuratma, platform of existence. Would you like to say anything else, Dravida?
Yeah. There's an interesting verse that appears like 4 or 5 times in the Bhagavatam. Not exactly, but almost substantially. Arteya vidyamane pi sangsatirin navartate dhyayato vishayanasya swapne nartagamo yata. For one who is meditating on sense gratification, material life, although lacking factual existence, does not go away, just as the unpleasant experiences of a dream do not. So this word swapna means dream. And also, I was thinking it's mentioned that this whole existence of the material world is kind of a dream of Mahavishnu. Have you ever heard that? It's like a mental construct. And the idea is that, well, okay, it may be a dream, it may not be a dream, but it seems very real. The pain of death, the pain of all of the things, the suffering. If it seems real, it is real, because you're talking about the experience of suffering. And okay, it's coming through our nervous system, and it does something in the brain, and the soul experiences as pain. But then it's painful. In other words, that is the reality, but it's a reflection, just like Krishna says at the beginning of the 15th chapter. It's like an upside down banyan tree, right? In other words, it's a reflection. It's not the real substance of the spiritual reality, but because we're experiencing it life after life as painful or pleasurable, and having ideas and going here and there, it seems real to us, and therefore that's the experience of the soul. Is that we're not experiencing the reality of the spiritual world, we're experiencing the reflection of it, but that the suffering is real, the transient pleasures are real, and that's what this whole material world is. So that's why it said uttishta jagata, wake up, get up, jeev jago. That you're living in a dream world, you're dreaming, life after life, but come to the reality. Asato ma sadgamaya. That's the way I think about it.
Balaram?
Just in addition, you're mentioning that if you have a dream and you have some interaction with Krishna or some Leela with Krishna, and you say, okay, well, let me write another canto, and how everybody would laugh. But we accept Vyasadeva and, 6 Goswamis, many writers in the past have, it's like a revelation, and then they write. So within our human experience, means humans in this world, we all have to accept some type of authority in terms of us gaining knowledge. And if we don't accept, some people, they worship Freud or Darwin, or some people, they say, I don't accept any philosophy. I just, but much of what people do in their lives means the way they're living is based on a type of understanding, which could be a mix-up of all these different philosophies. Or they say, I just don't have any philosophy, I'm just an animal. Right? I just eat and I sleep, and okay, fine. So we have to choose who we're going to follow. So we do follow these personalities, and we do accept that they've had revelations and that they've recorded them, and we accept those as our authority based on their character, their saintly character, and the knowledge making sense. It's very comprehensive. It's the most comprehensive. So we accept it. Logically, it's most comprehensive. And also the results are amazing if one practices what they've outlined. But to say that, if I just go to sleep and I have this whole thing in my mind and I write another canto, I could, through my spiritual practice, through the mercy of my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, I can write. I should write. I should write my realizations. Prabhupada wanted that, based on Sadhu, Shastra, and Guru. But I'm not going to make something up. You could say like a 13th canto or something. Because there's already been people who have been empowered by Krishna to do something like that. Vyasadeva, 6 Goswamis, they're empowered, specially empowered personalities to do that. Now, for people like us, we write, but not of the nature that they write. So, anyways, I'm just as an addition.
can end here. All glories to Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.